they have to be in on it.
Yeah, I would go along with that. Okay, so they've just got no moral courage or scruples in their body, basically. They're just led by their ambition, I suppose, as journalists. Okay, well, last year, some of the families of the alleged terrorists were sort of on trial for assisting in the attacks. And you sent your film to that particular case. Tell us about that, Muad'Dib, and then tell us what happened to you after you sent your video to the court.
I read in the media about what was happening to these 3 young men, and I read what the prosecutor said, and the prosecutor said that there was no doubt that the 4 original ones were guilty of these crimes. And then at their subsequent trial, he then said there is no dispute about these Mohammed Siddiqui Khan and Shehzad Tanweer, Jermaine Lindsay and Hasib Hussain. There was no doubt and there was no dispute that they had carried out these bombings. Well, millions of people doubted and millions of people disputed. So he was actually committing perjury by telling the jury these lies. The judge, when he had the potential jurors, and out of whom he was going to choose 12, he told them, of course you know that Mohammed Siddiqui Khan, Shehzad Tanweer, Jermaine Lindsay and Hasib Hussain carried out this atrocity. And they can't know that these people carried out this atrocity because it's never been proved. They have been tried by the media. They've not been tried by a court of law. And the evidence, so-called evidence against them, wouldn't stand up in a court of law. They would never be able to get a prosecution, a conviction, with the evidence that is out there, especially with what I put on the film, all the anomalies and all the proof against it. So the judge had no right to say that to the prospective jurors. So they've already poisoned the minds of the jurors before the trials even started with the judge. And then the prosecutor on the first day is saying there's no doubt that they carried out these atrocities, which is perjury. And I couldn't sit still for that. I just absolutely could not sit still, having made the film and knowing that, to my mind, it was impossible for these 4 men to have done it. I couldn't sit still and let a miscarriage of justice happen. And what I was saying earlier about the inquest, the authorities can limit the evidence that's put before the jury. It can slant it, just as was happening there. They can slant it, they can keep the truth out of the court, and then get the verdict that they are aiming to do. So they are, in fact, perverting the cause of justice.
And am I right in thinking that it's actually the law that if you knowingly have evidence for a trial that you know about, that you are duty-bound to submit that evidence to the court? Is that? I would
hope that's it. I haven't investigated that side of it, but that's common sense, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean, you would think that would have to be the case.
And
but they made up all these rules and regulations and all the rest of it to manipulate everything so that they can do whatever they want. That if a jury, for there to be a proper trial, the jury has to be fully informed in order to come to the correct verdict. If they're not fully informed or they are incorrectly informed, then they cannot possibly give a correct verdict.
Now, one comment
and
I think...
So,
sorry, go on.
Go on.
One comment I think I heard somebody make, attacking you, is that you sent these films to the jury members. Just tell us what you actually did, Muad'Dib.
I sent 5 copies of the DVD in an envelope to the court. I sent it to the foreman of the jury. Didn't know who he was, just put to the foreman of the jury in the case of these 3 young men.
Okay.
Care of the court. So they went to the court. So the court then had the possibility of either handing these DVDs, of watching them, handing the DVDs to the foreman of the jury, or not, as the case may be, as they would see fit.
Yeah.
And I also sent a copy to the judge who was sitting on the case to point out to him that he had misdirected the jury.
Okay.
And I sent that to the court. I didn't interfere with any members of the jury. I didn't go to their homes. I didn't stalk anybody. Yeah. I was over here. It was impossible to do that.
Yeah.
I was in Ireland all of the time. I sent them care, both packages, I sent them care of the court. And then it's for the court authorities to decide what to do with them. And there is a technicality in the law. It's called an amicus curiae brief, which basically, that's Latin. In English, it's a friend of the court brief, where somebody who has information can send it to the court, and then the court decides whether, to allow it to be submitted to the jury or not. I thought possibly they would watch the film and they would call me as a witness. But they didn't do that.
No. So,
as
I know, yeah. So,
as you know,
so
yeah.
How long after you or they received that package did you get a visit? And tell us what happened. Was it?
Well, in between. You see, the BBC were not allowed to broadcast their 7/7 hit piece on me, their Conspiracy Files 7/7. They were not allowed to broadcast it because of the trial of these young men.
Right.
So what happened was that I'd refused to take part in it, but I'd sent these films to the court. Okay, so then what happened was that the BBC contacted me by email, and when we're talking about the BBC, we're talking about the government, basically.
Right, yeah.
Contacted me and asked me to take part in their hit piece.
So this was after you'd sent the DVDs to the court, then?
Yes, I'm pretty sure
okay,
it was. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, carry on.
And asked me to take part in the hit piece, and of course they were trying to get me to recant on what I'd said and what I'd put in the film, which I wasn't prepared to do. Because I still firmly believe that what I put in the film is the truth. And so, because I believe that because I wouldn't take part in their hit piece and recant on what I'd said, that they then took the legal route and decided to charge me. Like, if you won't play ball with us, then, we're going to hit him with the bat.
Right. Okay. I didn't realise that the two were possibly connected, the BBC coming over and, what then happened to you. Okay. Yeah. So tell us what happened next with regards to your arrest.
Well, I got a visit from the Garda, which is the name for the Irish police. They call Garda Síochána, which means basically guardians of the peace. But they are the police in Ireland. And there were about 8 of them. 2 of them were plain clothes, and they were from the Dublin extradition branch. And the other were uniformed, and they were local to where I live. And there were about 8 of them, and they came and got me up in early in the morning. I was still in bed, and they ransacked the place and took away my computers, took away my printer, my DVD burner, and documents, articles, different things, and took me to the court in Dublin, and I was sent to prison on remand. I was in there for 10 days before I was granted bail.
Right. So did they cuff you when they came into the house? Did they handcuff you, or was it?
No. After they handcuffed me after the High Court.
Okay.
Once the judge had said that I was to be remanded in custody, then they handcuffed me.
Okay.
Because up until then, it has to be a court that says something, unless you've been caught in the act of a crime, of course. If you were burgling or something, then they would have put handcuffs on you to take you to the station, but I wasn't accused of anything like that. So, but I got the feeling that the two plainclothes from the extradition branch, going on what they took and the lies that they told me, they said that if I gave them the DVDs, they would leave everything else alone.
Right.
I gave them the DVDs, and then they went through everything.
Right, okay.
Okay, so they lied to me. And from their attitude, I think that they possibly in link with or work for MI5.
Right, okay.
The Irish people know that the British Secret Services are still have infiltrated and are still here in Ireland, even though it's a republic and it's not under the Crown.
Right.
Or not officially under the Crown.
Right. Of course, it was a European arrest warrant that they had to trump up in order to get you arrested.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, there was. Yes, it was from Westminster Court, Magistrates Court. I think that they got the arrest warrant, and then they applied to the European Court for a European arrest warrant because I wasn't in the UK, and had not been in the UK at any time during this.
Right. So you spent 10 days in a cell, and then you went before the court after that. Is that correct?
Yeah. Then I went to apply to a bail hearing.
Yes.
And the judge granted me bail. And put bail restrictions. They took my passport, driving license, made me promise that I wouldn't apply for any travel documents, and I had to pay a bond. And
did this prevent you from talking to anyone in England and Wales at that point after 10 days?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes. Because the trial of these three young men was ongoing.
Okay.
What will probably interest your audience is the fact that they tried to arrest me before these three young men's trial started, their second trial, because they were put on trial in their first trial. The jury could not reach a verdict because basically there was no evidence against them.
Yeah.
And so they had to decide then whether they would let them go or whether they would retry them. And they're so desperate to try to make the public believe their story about these four young men and the bombers and all the rest of it, that they were desperate to get a conviction of somebody to say by extension, look, these three are guilty of helping the other four, so the other four must have been guilty of doing the bombing. And
I mean, those people would be good people to interview as well, I guess. They're the ones that were accused this time.
Yeah.
Okay, so
the thing is that they tried to arrest me. They had scheduled the second trial, and they tried to arrest me and have me safely in custody before the trial started, so that I couldn't say anything or do anything anything further. And so the court here made me, one of the bail conditions was that I would not contact anybody in England or Wales.
Right.
Which is why you've had to go to Scotland.
Yes, yes. So after you've spent 10 days in the cell and then they've let you out on bail conditions, they arrested you again, am I right, at some point?
Yeah, because when I had the hearing, the actual extradition hearing came up, the judge, basically the barrister, my legal representatives, didn't use the defence that I wanted them to use.